Hey all, Trebird here. So we finished the Terra Arc, and now the time has come to put together everything we learned and come up with a quick analysis of Terra's character, and come up with a theme, in the literary sense of the term, in a message that's conveyed through the telling of the story, through the events, and through this character. What sort of theme surrounds Terra? So, why don't we get started? First of all, before we jump in, I should probably warn you, the vast majority of this analysis will have to do with Terra's relationships. This is because her relationships reveal the most about her. We don't have a lot in the way of backstory, and her actions seem to be defined every bit by how she interacts with people as her motivations, both of which having an equal part to play in them. So first off, let's get the shorter one out of the way, Terra's conflict and motivation. Terra's primary source of conflict is the instability of herself and her world. This conflict is complicated by her insecurities, those who prey on those insecurities, and the bad decisions she makes because of these insecurities, which leads into her desire for control over her life. Every decision she makes is informed by this particular desire. This is something that I learned when I was actually in an acting class, that when you have characters in a story, they need to have a goal that they're constantly moving towards. Everything they do is dedicated to that goal. If at any given time they fail to achieve that goal, they change their methods in order to adjust for the obstacles that are put in their way. Before the Titans, this stability and this control over her life was virtually non-existent. She attempted to do good, but inevitably lost control over her powers. It doesn't help that, evidently, she had no role model to help her with her abilities, and all indications point to a lack of a family, or at the very least, a supportive one, as she very quickly embraces the support and guidance of virtually anybody. She's an earth elemental adrift, and she'll take any foundation she can get, so long as it's strong. Her conflict is aggravated whenever that control slips through her fingers, whether with her powers, when her emotions are thrown into disarray, or when she loses control over her relationships. It's finally resolved when she is given agency, freedom to make her own choices. That came from a foundation of encouragement, support, and honesty. So, now that we talked a little bit about her story as a whole, and the conflict and her motivation and that dynamic that works into her character, let's dive into her relationships. A character's relationships with others is every bit as helpful in defining their story as their background and motivation. Let's get the less obvious interactions out of the way first. First off, we've got Cyborg and Starfire. These are the characters whose interactions with Terra see the least depth, but nonetheless contribute to the narrative. Neither of them knew her very well, nor did they get to know her all that thoroughly. But here's the important part. They gave her the benefit of the doubt. They hesitate to strike her when they're on opposite ends of battle, even going so far as to show concern for her well-being when they're in a fight. What does this tell us about Terra and her story? That the friendship she built with the Titans had a far stronger foundation than her apprenticeship with Slade. Even the ones she knew the least were willing to offer support, even when their surface emotions didn't want them to. So how about her interaction with Robin? It's pretty interesting. It's another instance of a character who doesn't see a lot of interaction with her, but still contributes, mostly by value of both his history and his position as a leader. Robin was willing to take her in, even act as a mentor, in many ways mirroring Slade's interaction with her. However, unlike Slade, he didn't resort to fear-mongering and manipulation. Rather, he elected to be straightforward, which fell flat when he revealed that he knew about her lack of control, after Slade aggravated her fears of what would happen should others know. Later, he becomes a foil for Terra herself, drawing from when he was Slade's apprentice, and when his fears were played upon. Both had been coerced into turning on their friends. Both were treated merely as extensions of Slade's will, and both eventually overthrew their oppressor with the help of their friends. So next up, Raven's interaction. This one is pretty important. We had a whole episode devoted to this character dynamic. The way I describe these characters is that they're polar opposites, on the same axis of women whose power and whose lives threaten to spiral out of their control, but on opposite ends. Raven exercises a control over her emotions, her powers, and her life that could almost be called excessive, whereas Terra has next to none. Their position as polar opposites even goes as far as their respective color schemes. Both their Titans outfits feature black prominently, but Raven has purple as her dominant color, with Terra featuring yellow. Purple and yellow on the color spectrum are complementary, which means they're on opposite sides, for those less artsy among you. Given that Terra in the comics were primarily red, I'm inclined to believe this choice was intentional. And just a little note for funsies, the first appearance of Terra's primarily black with yellow outfit was Titan Rising, which just so happened to be the episode that featured the Terra Raven character dynamic. Yeah, it seems pretty intentional. One could even call them elemental opposites. Raven's name alone hints at association with the air, coupled with the fact that she frequently floats rather than walks, and her abilities in battle often manifest in causing things to fly and levitate. Both even have opposite ends of a problem. Raven imposes an enormously restrictive amount of control over herself, i.e. grounding herself, in the face of a damning inevitability, while Terra is forced to drift in the face of a terrifying uncertainty. With this in mind, Raven's distrust of Terra has every bit as much to do with how the two are similar as to how the two are different. Raven sees in Terra what she's afraid she will become, or possibly what she already was, a danger to herself and her friends, feebly fighting for stability and control in an ultimately futile struggle. At least, futile if fought alone. So now we're getting to one of the two really big ones. First off, we have Slade. Slade represents a false promise of security, paid with the price of freedom. He used fear in order to scare Terra into surrendering control to him. Draw whatever disturbing historical parallel you like, there's plenty of them. Slade is able to project the illusion of strength to Terra, able to trick her into believing his is the kind of power she needs, that of a rigid iron fist. Terra seeks stability, and in her desperation, sees the hardest, most rigid being as the most stable, the strongest, and the most enduring, and attaches herself to that figure when she is tricked into believing all other foundations were collapsing, when they were merely showing a little bit of flexibility. However, rigid things break. Iron rusts, and fists break knuckles. The foundation she built on Slade collapses and threatens to swallow her up, as his stability and control are, in truth, the security that comes with slavery. She does not have control over her life until this new source of strife is overthrown. What we've seen with the interaction with Slade is lots of coercion, lots of fear, and lots of attacking every other source, every other foundation, to force her to come to him. But, as we see, what ultimately wins out in the end is her bond with Beast Boy. The attraction here is one built on similarities, to a point. Both are wild, untamed creatures that are, on some level, outsiders. Both are people of simple pleasures, one might even say earthly, and both share a simple sense of humor and a joie de vivre. Where they differ, however, is important. Beast Boy has very rarely been without a family in one form or another. He even states that his attempts to go solo will end badly and How Long Is Forever, outside the scope of this character arc, but still important to note. He fully understands the benefits of being connected to a family, to a group of friends. He also understands the value of encouragement and support, in light of being more rigidly controlled in the Doom Patrol, and receiving freedom, support, and camaraderie in the Titans. These are things Terra is only beginning to understand with the Titans, and she barely understands what being in a family is like. She's so used to being on her own that her vision is very idealistic. that she doesn't seem to understand the magnitude of her betrayal, even calling out Beast Boy's promise to stay loyal to her without understanding the emotional damage the revelation of her allegiance to Slade did to him. Without really knowing that friends and families do sometimes fight and will take wrongs very personally, especially if it's conflated by lies, which can be enormously destructive to any relationship, she assumes Beast Boy's anger with her is eternal, and signals the end, not helped by him saying that she doesn't have any friends. As mentioned earlier, neither of them were innocent in this matter. Neither of them. Here's a key aspect of Beast Boy's relationship with Terra, though. After all of that, after every single betrayal, he's still loyal to her. This loyalty is subconsciously reflected in his choices of forms when remembering or seeking out Terra, the dog and the wolf, both of which embody loyalty, the dog to the individual and the wolf to the group. Even while he's angry, he still hesitates when the opportunity comes to strike, even confused when she suggests he just kill her. Like the father of the prodigal son, he just wants the person he loves back. In the end, Beast Boy ultimately sticks to his love of Terra, and she ultimately chooses him. The two come through for each other, with Beast Boy providing that encouragement and support he did at the beginning of their interaction. He doesn't even want to see her go, but she chooses to stay behind and use the freedom he helped her secure to save him in return. Beast Boy ties up a subtly delivered theme nicely in regard to Terra's character arc, that offering someone agency, support, encouragement, and love will ultimately make a better person than iron-fisted authority that promises security, and will offer more stability even than that rigid, hard-lined way of thinking. We can learn to keep an eye out for these kinds of relationships in our lives, whether we're the Terras searching for that kind of stability and support, or the Beast Boys that have an opportunity to give that to someone else. We also can learn to be cautious of the Slades who ask us to surrender our agency in exchange for control and security. Examine those things they tell us to be afraid of, and see if they really are something to fear, or are worth the terror that comes with the sacrifice of control. And if these sorts of fears are about other people, try and look into the other people. You're going to get emotional, sure, everybody does, but let those emotions out and then seek out the people that these fears are being evoked about. Who says that a kid's cartoon is worthless because it's for children? Who says adults can't enjoy it? Who says adults can't learn something from it? This is a kind of insight into healthy human relationships that you rarely see most people in the real world emulate. This is why I treat cartoons, even kids' cartoons, with every bit of respect that is due any work of art or any piece of literature. They are worthy of this sort of respect. They are worthy of this sort of scrutiny. And they are worthy of critique and examination. And that's why I love the Terra Arc. The more I looked into it, the more I saw this beautiful story. This well-crafted narrative that rivals the likes of its more adult contemporaries in terms of its subtlety and its quality. It's a beautiful story about freedom versus security, about somebody securing agency, about fear of losing control over your life. It's a beautiful love story, and it's a beautiful description of what makes a healthy, functional relationship. And that's basically what I have to say about the Terra Arc. Sometimes we need to make sure that we remember what was done well before as well as what was done badly, and understand what about it works. And in the spirit of me knowing what's working and what doesn't, what do you like about this particular series of videos, and what do you think can be improved on? Is there any other show you'd like to see me cover? I mean, I imagine it might get a little boring watching me talk about nothing but Teen Titans for a bit. I do have a few things lined up, but let me know what you'd like to see in the comments. And we like to hear from you. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Until next time, I've been Trebird. This has been Hoof Hearted. Catch y'all later.
I am a stone. flesh and bone, unaffected. You're a fool, I will not be. I am a stone, unaffected. Rain hell down onto me. Flesh and bone, unaffected. You're a fool.